Today we are talking about the Balloonfest disaster of '86. It sounds like something which everyone should know about, but quite frankly, I had no idea what this thing even was before I looked into it. And let me tell you, as far as cock-ups go, they've really cocked up on this one. So, what was Balloonfest? In the year 1986 in Cleveland, Ohio, the local chapter of the United Way, a non-profit company raising funds for various charitable organisations, had the brilliant idea that involved hundreds of thousands of balloons. The reason? Well, it was a publicity stunt to such a magnitude that was meant to draw the attention, and in turn, the attention to the charitable causes it was trying to promote. This you'd think would be a good thing, but when the actual publicity stunt turns out to be an absolute massive disaster, the whole charitable side of things gets rather overshadowed by putting a spotlight on the absolute cock-up this entire event was. The plan was plain and simple. You need to break the world record for the release of as many balloons in one go as possible. This sounds like a good bit of old fun for everyone, but the question just sits that once you release that many balloons, what happens to the balloons afterwards? Just to give you an idea of how many balloons we're talking about, United Way worked together with a Los Angeles-based balloon company to set up a large rectangular structure in the centre of the city to hold all the balloons before release. This was housed on the southwest quadrant of Cleveland's public square. It measured 250 feet by 150 feet, about 76 metres to 46 metres in size. This was bloody massive, just in case that wasn't already clear. Because this whole thing was for a good cause and was for charity, they offered the public the opportunity to buy a balloon to be included in this release, $2 per balloon, with the original idea of having 2 million balloons. But after some time, they settled for the meagre amount of only 1.4 million balloons. 1.4 million balloons. I mean, that is mind-blowing. It does make you wonder how long it took to blow all of those up. Quite some time from the sounds of it. I mean, no wonder they needed such a big box to house them all in. 1.4 million. Jeez. Let's just hope they had actual air pumps to do this and there wasn't just one guy blowing them all up with his mouth. I imagine that got pretty tiring after a while. They did in fact have helium inside the structure to blow up the balloons, thankfully. So with the power of 2,500 volunteers blowing up these balloons around the clock on an assembly line, this was done in still quite a long time. On the day of launch, being the 27th of September 1986, the original release was brought forward given that there was a rainstorm on the day of the scheduled release. So this was eventually scheduled for 1:50 in the afternoon. There was a crowd of over 100,000 people present in the streets, waiting for the release of all these balloons, eagerly anticipating this event and witnessing a world record attempt. Close to 1.5 million balloons rose up from Public Square surrounding Terminal Tower and surpassing the world record by quite a significant margin. Wow, that is not something you see every day. I'm not gonna lie, despite the fact that this was an absolute unmitigated disaster, it looks pretty cool. You gotta give them that. So, where's the problem in all this? Well, the initial excitement of this whole thing would soon fade when the reality of 1.5 million balloons being released soon hit everybody. Quite literally. Balloons normally deflate over time and fall to the ground. However, the Balloonfest balloons collided with a front of cool air and rain, which caused them to drop towards the ground whilst still inflated. The descending balloons clogged the land and waterways of northwest Ohio and generally caused a massive issue for everybody there. The main issue is the huge environmental impact this had, with many balloons being found ashore in Canada, which resulted in water pollution. The disruption to transport was apparent in that the balloons were the result of numerous road traffic collisions, with drivers reportedly swerving to avoid huge blizzards of multicoloured balloons descending upon the roads. Yes, that's right, it only takes a minute for you to take your eye off the road and see the massive emerging balloon cloud to then crash into the barrier on the side of the road. Burke Lakefront Airport had to shut down a runway for half an hour after balloons had landed there, but perhaps most troubling of all are the injuries and fatalities that happened because of this whole thing. Yes, fatalities we're talking about. People died because of Balloonfest. Because you'd think something so innocent for charity would not have such a knock-on effect, but it unfortunately did. 2 fishermen were reported missing by their families on the day of the event, with the quote, "asteroid field of balloons making it difficult to search for the men." A search and rescue boat crew tried to spot the fishermen floating in the lake, but guard officials said balloons in the water made it almost impossible to see if anyone was actually in the lake. The rescuers had to call off the search 3 days later, but soon after the bodies of the men were found in the water washed ashore. There was also an incident where horses in a pasture were spooked by the descent of thousands of helium balloons and allegedly suffered permanent injuries as a result. The owner of the pasture sued United Way for $100,000 but settled for an undisclosed sum. As you might expect, the aftermath of this entire thing resulted in Guinness no longer recording these types of records, anything that can cause an unmitigated disaster, such as Balloonfest. Because yes, the idea of releasing millions of balloons does sound cool, but at what cost? I mean, we're talking about people that bloody died because of this, so no wonder they've taken these measures. That, and the fact that United Way got sued into the absolute ground. Any money they made in charity had to basically be paid in settlement fees with everybody that decided to sue them because of the balloons being released, resulting in the whole charity event being pointless because it raised no money. Yes, like I said, an absolute disaster. The disaster of Balloonfest 86. If you guys like that video, here's another one just like it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Fantastic.